Have you ever felt like the harder you try to lose weight, the harder it gets? Maybe you've been there. You start eating less. You cut back on your favorite foods. You force yourself to walk more, exercise more, and tell yourself that this time will be different. A few days go by, maybe even a couple of weeks. Then somehow the scale barely moves. Or worse, the weight comes right back. And after a while, you start asking yourself the same painful question. What is wrong with me? I know that feeling because I've been there too. For years, I thought weight loss was all about discipline. I believed that if I could just be stronger, eat less, and push myself harder, the pounds would finally come off. But no matter how hard I tried, I kept ending up in the same place. Tired, frustrated, staring at the scale and feeling defeated. The truth is, most people aren't failing because they're lazy. They're failing because their body is getting the wrong signals. Poor sleep, constant stress, late-night snacking, blood sugar swings, eating patterns that quietly tell the body to hold on to fat instead of burning it. That's the part nobody talks about. Your body is always listening. Every meal, every snack, every night of bad sleep sends a message. And sometimes those messages work against your weight loss goals without you even realizing it. The good news? You don't need another extreme diet. You don't need to spend hours in the gym. And you definitely don't need to punish yourself. Today on Hidden Organ Secrets, we're going to talk about 5 simple changes that can completely change the signals your body receives. These are small habits that helped many people stop fighting their metabolism and finally start working with it. And once you understand them, losing those extra pounds may feel a lot easier than you ever thought possible. For a long time, I thought my weight problem was my fault. Every time a diet failed, I blamed myself. I told myself I needed more discipline, more motivation, more self-control. Maybe you've done the same thing. You eat healthy all day. Then one stressful evening turns into snacks, cravings, and regret. Suddenly, it feels like you've ruined everything. But here's what I eventually learned. Most people aren't struggling because they're weak. They're struggling because their body is working against them. When you're not sleeping well, your hunger hormones change. When stress stays high, your body holds on to fat more easily. When blood sugar goes up and down all day, cravings get stronger and stronger. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. I wish someone had told me this years ago. Because the moment I stopped treating myself like the enemy, things started making more sense. My body wasn't trying to sabotage me. It was simply reacting to the signals I was giving it every day. If you're frustrated with your weight right now, remember this. You are not broken. You are not lazy. Your body is responding exactly the way it's designed to respond. The goal isn't to fight it harder. The goal is to start giving it better signals. One of the biggest mistakes I made was thinking effort alone would solve everything. I would cut calories as low as possible. I'd spend extra time doing cardio. I'd promise myself I was finally getting serious. But at the same time, I was still eating late at night. I was sleeping 5 or 6 hours. I was stressed all the time. And I was constantly snacking on foods that sent my blood sugar on a roller coaster. Looking back, it's no surprise nothing worked. The best way I can explain it is this. Imagine trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas pedal and the other foot on the brake. You can push harder and harder on the gas, but the car isn't going anywhere fast. That's what many people do with weight loss. They focus on eating less and exercising more while ignoring the habits that are quietly slowing everything down behind the scenes. Poor sleep, late-night eating, stress, constant blood sugar spikes, those things act like the brake pedal. And until you take your foot off the brake, pressing harder on the gas won't get you very far. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to punish my body and started focusing on removing the things holding me back. If I'm being honest, almost none of my bad food decisions happened at breakfast. They didn't happen at lunch either. They happened at night. After a long day, after stress, after I was mentally exhausted. That's when the cravings showed up. Not for grilled chicken or vegetables. I'm talking about cookies, ice cream, potato chips, sweet cereal, and anything else that felt comforting in the moment. And that's what makes nighttime eating so tricky. Most of the time, We're not actually hungry. We're tired. We're stressed. We're bored. We're looking for comfort after a difficult day. I used to think those late-night snacks didn't matter much, but they added up fast. Not just in calories. They affected my sleep. They made me wake up feeling sluggish. They made me crave more sugar the next morning. Then, the cycle started all over again. The funny thing is, once I started paying attention, I realized my weight loss struggle wasn't happening all day long. It was happening during those few hours before bed. And when I finally got control of my evenings, everything else started getting easier. Sometimes the biggest change isn't eating less. It's simply stopping the food decisions that happen when you're tired, emotional, and running on empty. For years, I never thought much about eating at night. If I got hungry after dinner, I'd grab a bowl of cereal, maybe some cookies. Sometimes ice cream while watching TV. It seemed harmless, but after a while, I started noticing a pattern. Whenever I ate close to bedtime, I never felt great the next morning. I'd wake up tired, even after spending enough hours in bed. My mouth felt dry, my face looked puffy, and for some reason, all I wanted was something sweet first thing in the morning. Back then, I thought it was just part of getting older. Now I see it differently. When you eat right before bed, your body is still busy processing food when it should be slowing down and recovering. Your heart keeps working harder. Blood sugar stays up and down. Deep sleep doesn't come as easily. And that's where the trouble starts. You wake up feeling drained instead of refreshed. You crave sugar because your energy feels low. You hold on to extra water and feel heavier than you actually are. It's a cycle a lot of people get stuck in without realizing it. The strange part is that the problem often isn't what you're eating. It's when you're eating it. Once I started giving my body a few hours without food before bed, my mornings felt completely different. More energy, fewer cravings, better sleep, and honestly, that one change surprised me more than almost anything else. One of the simplest habits I ever started turned out to be one of the most powerful. I call it the kitchen closed rule. Nothing complicated. After dinner, the kitchen is officially closed for the night. No snacks, no random trips to the pantry, no standing in front of the refrigerator hoping something interesting appears. What helped me stick with it was something incredibly simple. I brushed my teeth right after dinner. That small habit sent a signal to my brain that eating for the day was finished. At first, it felt strange. I still had cravings some nights. I still wanted a snack while watching television. But after a week or two, something changed. The habit got easier. The late-night eating started disappearing. I slept better. I woke up feeling lighter and less bloated. The best part was that I stopped relying on willpower. I wasn't fighting food every night anymore. The decision had already been made. The kitchen was closed. Looking back, that tiny rule probably saved me from hundreds of unnecessary calories every week without feeling like I was dieting at all. For most of my life, I believed breakfast had to happen the second I got out of bed. If I didn't eat right away, I thought something bad would happen. But eventually, I learned something that completely changed my perspective. Breakfast simply means breaking a fast. That's it. It doesn't have to happen at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. just because the clock says so. For example, if you finish dinner at 7 p.m. and eat breakfast at 7 a.m., you've already gone 12 hours without food. Your body has had time to rest, time to process what you ate, time to use some of the energy already stored inside you. When I stopped rushing to eat first thing in the morning, I noticed something interesting. I wasn't as hungry as I thought I would be. My energy stayed steady. I wasn't constantly thinking about food. Some mornings I'd wait a little longer before eating, and honestly, I felt fine, maybe even better. This isn't about starving yourself. It's about giving your body a little more time between meals. For many people, that small window can make a bigger difference than they expect. Sometimes eating less often feels easier than constantly trying to eat less food. One thing that surprised me about intermittent fasting was how different it felt once my body got used to it. At first, I expected to be hungry all the time. I thought I'd spend my mornings staring at the clock, waiting for my next meal. But that's not what happened. After a few weeks, I noticed something changing. I wasn't constantly thinking about food anymore. I wasn't reaching for snacks every couple of hours. And that endless feeling of hunger started calming down. From what I learned, part of the reason is that insulin finally gets a chance to come down. When we're eating all day long, our body is always dealing with incoming food. But when we go longer between meals, the body can start using some of the energy that's already stored away. That's when stored fat can begin to play a bigger role. What I liked most wasn't just the weight loss. It was the freedom. I wasn't planning my next snack every hour. I wasn't constantly fighting cravings. Food stopped controlling my day. And honestly, that felt just as important as seeing the number on the scale go down. For me, fasting wasn't about eating less. It was about giving my body enough time to do what it was designed to do. I think one of the biggest reasons people give up on fasting is because they expect results too fast. I know I did. A lot of people try it for 2 or 3 days and then decide it doesn't work. But here's the problem. They're still eating late at night. They're still sleeping poorly. They're still running on stress and cravings every day. Then they wonder why nothing changes. I learned this the hard way. Fasting by itself isn't some magic trick. It's only one piece of the puzzle. If you're fasting all morning but eating ice cream at 10 p.m. every night, your body is getting mixed signals. If you're sleeping 5 hours and living on caffeine, your body is still under stress. That's why so many people get frustrated. The fasting isn't necessarily failing. The system around it is. Once I started fixing my evenings, improving my sleep, and creating more consistent habits, fasting felt completely different. That's when the results finally started showing up. Not because I worked harder, because the whole system started working together. For a long time, I thought the hardest part was making it through the fasting window. But eventually, I realized something important. What I ate after the fast mattered just as much. Maybe you've done this before. You make it all morning without eating. Then your first meal is a bowl of cereal, a couple pieces of toast, a glass of juice, maybe a pastry and coffee on the way to work. It feels harmless. I used to do the exact same thing. The problem was that a meal like that left me hungry again a few hours later. My energy would go up fast and then come crashing down. Then the cravings started all over again. I found that when I broke my fast with mostly sugary or highly processed carbs, I never felt satisfied for very long. My body seemed to want more food almost immediately. That's why I eventually changed the order. Instead of starting with carbs, I focused on protein first. Eggs, Greek yogurt, lean meat, something that actually kept me full. The difference was amazing. My energy felt steadier. My cravings stayed quieter. And I wasn't constantly looking for something else to eat an hour later. That's when I realized that timing matters. But what you put on your plate matters just as much. One of the simplest changes I ever made ended up having one of the biggest impacts. I stopped starting my meals with carbs. For years, I'd grab toast, cereal, crackers, or something quick because it was easy. The problem was, I was hungry again not long after. It felt like I was constantly chasing food. Then I started doing something different. I made protein, the first thing on my plate. Eggs in the morning, salmon for lunch, lean chicken or turkey at dinner. After that came healthy fats like avocado, nuts, or olive oil. Then vegetables and other foods with fiber. Carbs came last. I wasn't trying to follow some complicated diet. I was simply changing the order. And honestly, I noticed a difference almost immediately. I stayed full longer. I wasn't opening the pantry every hour looking for something to snack on. My energy felt steadier throughout the day. The biggest surprise was how much quieter my mind became around food. I wasn't constantly asking myself what I was going to eat next. Looking back, I think many of us spend years trying to control our cravings when we should be focusing on preventing them in the first place. Sometimes, a small change in how you start a meal can make the rest of the day much easier. Once I started combining protein, healthy fats, and fiber in the same meal, things got a lot easier. Before that, I felt like I was always hungry. I'd eat breakfast and be looking for a snack by mid-morning. Then I'd eat lunch and start craving something sweet a couple of hours later. It was exhausting. What I eventually realized was that my meals weren't keeping me satisfied. When I started building meals around protein, healthy fats, and vegetables, everything changed. I stayed full longer. My energy felt more stable, and those sudden cravings didn't hit nearly as often. Instead of feeling hungry every few hours, I felt satisfied. Not stuffed, not uncomfortable, just satisfied. That made a huge difference. Because when you're genuinely full, you don't have to rely on willpower all day long. You're not constantly fighting the urge to snack. You're simply not thinking about food as much. For me, that was one of the biggest breakthroughs. The less chaos I created with my meals, the less chaos I felt around food. I think almost everyone reaches a point where the scale stops moving. I know I did. At first, the weight was coming off. I felt motivated. Everything seemed to be working. Then suddenly, nothing. The scale barely changed for days, sometimes weeks. And that's usually when people panic. I've made that mistake myself. The first thing I wanted to do was eat even less, cut more calories, do more workouts, push harder. But every time I did that, I ended up feeling exhausted and frustrated. What I eventually learned is that plateaus are normal. Your body doesn't lose weight in a perfectly straight line. Some weeks are faster, some weeks are slower. That doesn't mean you've failed. It doesn't mean your progress is gone. Most of the time, it means your body is adjusting. The real mistake is assuming that slower progress means you need to punish yourself. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stay consistent. Keep showing up. Keep following the habits that got you there in the first place. Because long-term success usually belongs to the people who stay patient when everyone else gives up. For a long time, I couldn't figure out why I was doing everything right during the week but still not seeing the results I wanted. Monday through Friday, I was focused. I ate better. I followed my routine. I stayed on track. Then the weekend showed up. A couple of drinks with friends, late-night snacks while watching a movie, a few handfuls of chips that somehow turned into half the bag. And before I knew it, the habits I'd worked so hard to build all week were gone for 2 straight days. The problem wasn't one cookie or one drink. It was the pattern. Late nights led to poor sleep. Poor sleep led to more cravings. More cravings led to more snacking. Then Monday morning arrived, and I felt like I was starting over again. I used to think weekends were supposed to be a break from healthy habits. Now I see them differently. You don't need to be perfect on weekends. You just need to avoid completely changing the rules. Because your body responds to consistency. When your sleep, eating schedule, and habits suddenly become chaotic for 2 days, your progress slows down. That's why so many people feel stuck. They're working hard for 5 days and undoing part of that progress in 2. Once I learned how to stay reasonably consistent on weekends, everything became much easier. One thing I've noticed over the years is that the people who lose weight and keep it off aren't always the most disciplined people. They're usually the people with the simplest systems. That surprised me. I used to think successful people had stronger willpower than everyone else. I thought they woke up motivated every day and never struggled with cravings. But that's not what I found. Most of them don't rely on motivation at all. They rely on routines. They eat at similar times. They keep certain foods in the house and avoid others. They follow habits that have become automatic. The truth is, motivation comes and goes. Some days you'll feel excited. Some days you won't. That's normal. What matters is having a system that still works when you're tired, stressed, busy, or not in the mood. That's what changed everything for me. I stopped asking myself how to become more motivated. I started asking how I could make healthy choices easier. Because when good habits become part of your routine, weight loss stops feeling like a constant battle. It simply becomes part of how you live. Looking back, the biggest lesson I learned had nothing to do with a special diet. It wasn't about cutting out every carb. It wasn't about spending hours in the gym. And it definitely wasn't about punishing myself. The real change happened when I started creating an environment that helped my body work with me instead of against me. I started sleeping better. I stopped eating so late at night. I paid more attention to when I ate, not just what I ate. I found simple ways to lower stress instead of carrying it around all day. And little by little, things began to change. My cravings got quieter. My energy became more stable. Healthy choices stopped feeling so hard. For years, I thought weight loss was about forcing my body to change. Now, I believe it's the opposite. Your body wants to function well. Your body wants balance. Sometimes it just needs the right conditions. That's why sustainable weight loss doesn't come from punishment. It comes from creating an environment where your body feels safe enough to let go of excess weight. Better sleep, less stress, fewer late-night food decisions, more consistency. Those things may not sound exciting, but they're often the difference between temporary results and lasting change. And honestly, that's the secret most people spend years searching for. Not another diet, a better environment. Before we finish, I want you to hear this. If you've been struggling with your weight for years, this message is for you. You are not a failure. You are not weak. And you don't need to become a completely different person to finally lose weight. I know how easy it is to blame yourself. I've done it too. Every failed diet feels personal. Every late-night snack feels like proof that you don't have enough discipline. Every Monday feels like another chance to start over. But what if the problem was never you? What if your body was simply responding to the signals it was getting every day? Because that's what I finally realized. The answer wasn't working harder. The answer was making a few simple changes and repeating them long enough for my body to trust them. So don't focus on changing your entire life overnight. Just start small. Close the kitchen a little earlier tonight. Wait a little longer before breakfast tomorrow morning. Put protein on your plate first. Give yourself a better night's sleep. Then, do it again the next day, and the day after that. Not perfectly, just consistently, because real change rarely happens from one big heroic effort. It happens from small actions repeated over and over until they become part of who you are. That's when everything starts to shift. Your cravings get quieter, your energy gets better, healthy choices feel easier, and weight loss stops feeling like a fight. So, remember this. The goal is not perfection. The goal is consistency. When your body receives the right signals long enough, fat loss stops being a battle and starts becoming a natural result of the life you're already living.